The masterclass today is bringing health tech products to market, which is quite a wide range, if you like. So I'll touch on it as an end-to-end. I'll start off about CPI. What does CPI do? CPI helps companies develop, prove, scale up, and commercialize new products and processes. Since a lot of you know who CPI is, I can skip quite on, but we're part of the UK's high value manufacturing catapult, which is part of the UK government's catapult network. So we're basically set up and chartered to help you succeed. If you succeed, we succeed, and that's our charter and our goal. How can we help move your innovation forward? We've been doing this for a long time. We've been around for about 20 years. This slide's a little bit out of date. We're now probably up to about 700 staff. And I think the way to think of CPI in getting your product to market is think of us as a force multiplier, as something that can bolt onto your business to help get your product to market. So with that said, we sit in the middle, really. We don't invent and we don't manufacture. We sit in the middle. We're part government funded, we're not-for-profit, and we're there to help through public and private collaborations get your product to market. So that's CPI. Let's talk about getting a health tech or a med tech product to market. And again, show of hands. Who thinks this is easy? Who thinks this is complicated? All those who think easy, hands up now, please. Not one. All those who think it's complicated, hands up now, please. Good. Okay, so what are the barriers in getting your health tech product to market? In my view, and in the customers and the clients we talk to, these tend to be the major barriers or challenges to overcome. And if I've got this wrong or I'm missing something in your experience, please feel free. But today in the market, the number one challenge or barrier to getting your health tech product to market is being able to fund it. On top of the funding, there can be technical challenges and complexities because you're doing something novel. It's an innovation by default, so it's new, it's complex, it's difficult. And if you're an SME or a micro SME, then getting access to resources and getting access to capital equipment can be quite hard. And that's why the UK government set up the Catapult Network to give you access to capital and to give you access to people and resources that you can bolt onto your business until such times as you can make your own make or buy decision to say, my business is healthy, I can buy the capital myself, I can get a hold of the staff. And then last but not least, I've got regulatory adherence, because regulatory, like it or not, is a mandatory thing and you have to abide by it. And there's a lot of things that you have to, or barriers you have to overcome from a regulatory point of view. So, a few slides on finance. If there's any finance or investors in the room, they will know this better than I. But how can you fund your new product development is one of the first questions people ask in getting your product to market. The graph shows basically on the x-axis the amount of funding you need from low to high, and then the risk associated with that funding again on the y-axis, low to high. And basically, it's a complex picture. You can get funding from friends and family when you're starting out. You might be wealthy enough to do it yourself. You could get grants from the government or other notified bodies, and then you go through angels, venture capital, direct lending, equity, IPO, and then you're off and running, and then you've got the bank at the bottom. So new product development funding is complex. We tend to operate at CPI in the grant space, and we also have an investment activity called CPI Enterprises that can help you with small amounts of funding to get going. So we're really an early stage investment. When we talk to funders and we say, like, what are you actually looking for to make you invest in a company? What makes a company investable? And one of our goals in terms of helping companies get to market is to try and make them more investable. So no surprise from a funder's point of view. What are they looking for? First and foremost, really, risk and return. And then after that, it's really all about uniqueness. Have you got a clearly defined strategy? Have you got an end vision? Is there an end point identified for the investor? How are they going to get their money back? Then it's like, are you solving a customer problem? And do you have a clear market value proposition? So is your product strong? And then you've got your objectives and the governance and incentivization you put on your business. And then investors look at the culture of your business. How does that run? If I then flip it to say, why do investors reject the opportunities? No surprise, really, actually, that in a lot of cases, it's the mirror image of why they invest. So, number one, the investors reject opportunities because they don't see the risk or return, or they don't see a competitive advantage, or you haven't articulated how well you're going to use their funds. They don't want you to use the funds and take a holiday to Australia. They want to see how the funds are going to be used to move the business forward. And they don't want you to be in a saturated or highly competitive market, and they don't want you to be in a small market. They want to see that your product's going into a large market, which basically means large returns for the company themselves. And then at the bottom, they want to see that you've got financial skin in the game. If they're giving you their money, they want to see that you in turn are putting your own money into them as well. So if I look at grant funding and pick that out, because that's something that CPI works on, and if you're interested in grant funding or how to get grants, then we can have a chat on our little stand over the course of a couple of days. But grant funding, key considerations you might want to think about for getting a successful grant award. You need to think about the funder, who you're applying to. You need to think about what their strategy is, what their objectives are, what the deadline is, because a lot of these funding calls come out with quite short deadlines, and you haven't got a lot of time to respond. And then look at the scope in terms of what they will fund and what they won't, and also what the T's and C's are to make sure that you're comfortable with what you're signing up for from a T's and C's perspective, and you're also comfortable with things like the IP provisions. Project concept is important, and also the partners. This is collaborative research and development. It's a consortia build, and the better your consortia, the stronger your consortia, the better the chance you have of getting funded. So they want to see really meaningful contributions from every partner. If they can have partners throughout the ecosystem in terms of getting it to market, if you've got a large corp in play, for example, that can help, because this is really a very, very competitive landscape. And what we've probably seen over the last few years, that it's mandatory to get a high score. If you're not scoring high on your grant application, you really are not going to get awarded. So think of grant funding as a bit like an exam question, if you like, and just make sure when you're going through it, you're answering all the questions on the exam as the funder wants to see them. For reference, really, and again, this is why I'd say, like, I'm more than happy to give copies of this out by email, for example. This is just some examples of funders that you can go to and look for, and keep an eye on their websites and say, these are people who may fund your health tech or your med tech innovation. So we've got Innovate UK, we've got regional pots like Launchpad, we've got things like the Gates Foundation in the US. European funding comes from Horizon. You've got NIHR, I4I. So be aware of the funders and when their calls are coming out. And this one just shows some upcoming calls that may or may not be of interest to you. There's an NHIR call coming out with a short deadline, 29th of May, and then there's some more coming out in July and some more coming out in September. So some examples of calls that will be available if you want to sort of apply for those, or if you want to talk to CPI about partnering with CPI to collaboratively go in as a consortium, then again, please come and see us at our booth and we can have a chat. If I talk about the health tech product development process now, so let's make the assumption that you've been really successful, you've got your funders on board, you've got your grant money, you've got money, and you're good to go. Now let's just have a look at the process that you have to go through to get your product to market. And again, no surprise, it's pretty complex. But if I look at the sort of like the x-axis at the bottom, your project would normally start. It would go through an idealization phase. You would move from there into feasibility and planning. And from there, once you've got a rough working prototype, you go into the detailed design and development. And from there, design transfer, verification, product launch, and then post-market engagement. And everything really for a regulated product in this space is working to getting your notified body approval, if that's applicable to the development you're doing. So again, regulatory is really important, and you should start thinking about regulatory early on in your product development. If I look at this in a slightly different way, and then start to layer on some of the quality and regulatory activities that you need to be cognizant of as you're going through it. In the idealization phase, you're getting your ideas together, but once you're moving into feasibility and design and development, the real nitty-gritty of the product development, you want to be thinking strongly about design control and design control to get you the regulatory approval that you need to get your product launched. Because again, this is all heading towards regulatory submission and approval. And again, a little takeaway when you're planning, be aware that regulatory submission and approval can be a lengthy process. And some of the customers we're talking to are saying regulatory submission and approval can be a 12 to a 24-month window. So planning out your product development is really important. And then obviously trying to get, got a pointer? Trying to get around that spinning wheel when you're in design and development to get to a final product and be ready to go to design transfer. You want to try and do that as fast as you can. And then when your product's launched, you move from design control to change control. And you need to be careful about ongoing management once you've launched the project to make sure that all changes are documented and following the regulatory guidance. So again, we've said complex for medtech product development. It requires a lot of disciplines and a lot of different skills depending on what you want to do. So you can go from formulation of novel materials, diagnostic reagent development and scale up, so like a chemistry part of it, through consumables and cartridges, readers and sensors, moving into a more like electronics phase. And then once you've got that, if you're doing some diagnostic devices or some wearables, you might want to communicate your wearable or your diagnostic device to the outside world. So communication via Bluetooth or LAN, getting data off your medical device and up into the cloud, being cognizant of cybersecurity, and then looking at what do you do with the data, because the data can be the real gold. So the data analytics and the AI is really important. And again, underpinning that all the way through is making sure that you can navigate your way through the regulatory pathway. So in summary, from a complexity point of view, depending on what your product is, many different skills and technologies can be required to get you to market. Examples can be the mechanical design, software and firmware, electronics, data science, formulation of materials, biologics, biotechnology, electronics, including comms. It's quite a lot to do for an SME, if you like, in a very, very wide range of skills, because you may find that as an SME, you'll be strong in one particular discipline, but you'll need all the disciplines to get your product to market. So you're going to need to either look to recruit and build your business or partner to get you there. A couple of slides on regulatory. Why do we have regulatory? Well, first and foremost, I think regulatory was there to ensure patient safety, which no one's going to say is a bad thing. But also, it's a complex field in its own right, because depending on where you want to launch your product, whether you want to launch in the UK or the US or in Europe, you'll be following a slightly different regulatory pathway. So be aware of where you intend to take your product to market, and then be aware of the regulations you have to follow. And it goes without saying that compliance with the regulations is mandatory. This is not something that you can elect to do or not. You have to do the regulatory approvals. And the other thing to note really is you really probably want to have regulatory consultancy on board your SME throughout the process, because one thing is true is that the only constant is change. And that really applies to the regulatory landscape as well. So you can see from 2017 through to 2030, there's a constant state of churn and change in the regulatory landscape. So you do need to keep abreast of that, either by doing it yourself within the company or by seconding it out or contracting out to a regulatory company. So from a regulatory point of view, thinking about regulatory as part of your new product development, again, first and foremost, it's mandatory. If you understand the regulations and plan it out well, and you make it part of your product design and development, you can save a lot of time and a lot of waste of resources. But I think the earlier you start thinking about regulatory, the better. So certainly at the conceptualization stage of your device design, make sure you're thinking about the regulatory aspects and make sure that then that's applied to the life cycle of your product development, and plan ahead and be aware that regulation isn't standstill and it's constantly evolving. And last but not least, do not underestimate the amount of work and documentation that will be required to get your product to market. So it's hard, it's complex. CPI was set up, we're part government funded. Our aim is to make you succeed. How can we help get your product to market? Well, firstly, I think it's fair to say that we're in this together with you and with our customers, because the way we're measured by government, we only really succeed if you succeed. So we've got skin in the game. We've got a vested interest to move your product through. And CPI is really a force multiplier for your business. What does that actually mean? How can we be a force multiplier for your business in the new product development activity? Well, we can take on complete or partial new product development. We can fill in skills gaps that you haven't got, or we can take your idea and your invention and we can run it as a product development. So we're there to support you for part of your journey or for a longer part of your journey, entirely up to you. But what it does give you is it gives you a bolt-on, that force multiplier. You get access to a talented team of scientists and engineers across all the disciplines, so physicists, chemists, biologists, all there to help move your product forward to market. And again, we've also got about 170 million of capital assets that are available to you. So again, from your SME journey, you don't have to make the capital investment. You can come in and get access to some of this capital that the UK government has kindly put in place to help you with your journey. And for larger corps, we can be a new technology or advanced technology sandbox. They can play in our facility without disrupting their own R&D, or they can look at more speculative advanced technologies. So that helps basically de-risk your product development. It can make your business more attractive to investors. And from a new product development point of view, what's really important is it can reduce your time to market. From a product development point of view, if you're doing it with CPI or with a third party, you're doing it yourself, I think these three tenets hold quite true. You need to understand what you're doing. You need to understand what you want to get out of it and have a deep understanding of what you're trying to do. Then you've got to innovate to a solution and be creative. And then you've got to deliver that solution. And in essence, that's what the product development activity actually is. Understand what you're trying to do, innovate a solution, and then deliver that solution. Proof of concept and scale up is something that we can do. Reduce risk is something, again, we said we can do. And by giving you access to proven demonstration assets and industry expertise, we can help you avoid the bear traps that you might fall in along the way. And by doing so, we can help decrease your time to market and get you there faster. And our expertise is across a lot of different core capabilities. We've got expertise in all of the sciences, all of the three sciences, and we've got a talented team ready to go. So how do you work with us? We can be a C&D partner or subcontractor. We can undertake projects based on a fee-for-service business, depending on what stage of your funding journey you're at. We can also help to signpost and connect you. So we are an innovation ecosystem convener. So we can help put you in touch with other companies who would help you progress your path to release. And our CPI Enterprises activity can also help you try and find funding or investment support. In terms of new product development, we're looking to engage in projects for IVD or diagnostic devices. We've done a lot of work in the wearable space, and we've done a lot of work in general medical devices. We've got a regular consulting bolt-on that can help you get the initial device plans done for your medical device and can give medical consulting along the way. And if your activity requires a clean room and you're an SME and you don't really want to spend money to actually build your own clean room, we can actually lease you some space within our clean room facilities in the northeast of England. I'd like to kind of close off with a few useful links and data that you may or may not find useful. We've got a few reports that we've done in collaboration with the UKRI and ABHI. We've got a strategic technology roadmap for the UK IVD industry. We've got challenges and opportunities for the UK health industry. The QR codes will take you to a place where you can download them. If you are old school, we still have a few paper copies on our little trestle table, but they are flying fast if you want to take one away. Or if you want to see me and leave your email address, I'll post you the link or I'll post you a copy. But they're robust. They're very, very good overall UK health tech industry reports done by CPI, ABHI, UKRI, and a few other partners. And then I've got some just miscellaneous links out here for like Office of National Statistics, British Library, MHRA, National Contact Points, Innovate Edge, although talking earlier to a colleague, apparently Innovate Edge is being rebranded. So some things for funding sources and some business tools and some general bits and pieces for patent searches and stuff that you may or may not find useful. Classifications and approval routes you probably know actually, but one of the first things you have to do in the health tech space is decide where your part's going to go and what classification it will fall under and then the approval route. I think the takeaway here really is that the amount of time to get notified body approval, and that's what we're seeing from talking to the customers and clients we're working with, it can be anywhere up to 2 years. So make sure you factor that into your planning. and make sure that you're aware of all the necessary standards. And again, not an extensive list, but there are plenty. So when I say that regulation, don't underestimate how much regulation work will be required to get your product to market. Just make sure that you know exactly what standards you have to comply with to get your particular product to market. Thank you for your time. I think I tried to run through this pretty quickly, as best I can. What I will say is that CPI and Harani will be holding a free one-day event. So when people say there's no such thing as a free lunch, that's a lie, because there's a free lunch involved with this one, and it's a free one-day event. And I think what we'll try and do is we'll try and go into this in a lot more detail. So we'll have dedicated speakers for a lot of the topics about funding, investment, technology, the market, and we'll just have a really good networking day. So if you're interested in attending, please drop me an email or pop by our exhibition stand and register interest. And we hope to see you on the 18th of June at the Grand Central in Belfast.